aren't we?
Yes.
Go on, get it in there.
We're ready.
Phil Vickery's in the kitchen with some cake. 2 cakes.
2 cakes.
2
yes.
cakes, Phil, they call it.
Yes. Lemon drizzle cake. Here we go. Here it is. Now, recently it was voted one of Britain's most favourite cakes. So I've got 2 versions here. One's a conventional version, which we call, and another one is a gluten-free version. I do have a certain proclivity for this sort of thing, and I rather like it, and it's very tasty. Now, before we get going, I've made many a cake, lemon drizzle cake, but I have to say, my very good friend Graham Kirkham, his mum, Ruth Kirkham, makes the best. So I phoned her this week and said, I've got to have your recipe. She was rather reluctant at the start to give it to me, but anyway, this is her recipe to start.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thanks, Ruth.
There you go. Right, let's talk about it. So, in this bowl here, I have a mixture of golden caster sugar or olive oil spread. It can be margarine, it can be butter, and you whisk those together. Now, the most important thing to remember is here, all these ingredients need to be at the same temperature. So when you add the eggs, it tends not to curdle. It'll curdle because the eggs are too cold or the butter's too cold.
Everything's room temperature or what?
Room temperature, and it works. OK. So all I've done here is I mixed together butter, margarine or olive oil spread with the sugar. It takes about a couple of minutes, and then this is her recipe, good old Ruth. 4 large eggs, not medium eggs, large eggs, so you get a nice fluffy mix. So you need to add roughly 1 at a time. Oh, this is pretty...
Yes, so it doesn't curdle.
Yeah, and you'll just see... I use a whisk at this stage, or you can use a machine, it's up to you.
So if you put too many in, it curdles?
It does curdle, yeah, it curdles, and it'll split. Now, you can get that back by adding a touch of flour, but it will make it slightly tough. Or if you slightly heat it, it melts it slightly and it will come back. Now, after you've put your 4 eggs in, I do add at this stage a little bit of lemon juice. That helps tighten the protein in there as well.
Lovely.
And fresh lemon as well, that goes in with lemon zest. And just bring that together like so. Now, down here I have one, because we don't want to talk about, look at me mucking about whisking in eggs. And this is one I've done already, and you'll see, there it is, hasn't split.
Lovely and fluffy.
Lovely and fluffy. Then I add 1 level teaspoon of baking powder, and I also add self-raising flour. So not only got a raising agent in here, you've got it extra as well.
So it's going to
give it a bit of lift.
Yeah.
Now, that also helps with things like, because we're using larger eggs. So obviously, you've got a bit more egg, a bit more weight, a bit more liquid. You need to lighten that slightly. And just...
The cake is so light.
Exactly.
That's the first thing I noticed, but also around the edges, very crispy.
Very crispy.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a second. So, you want to mix this together and be slightly careful, because even mixing at this stage, if you overwork the flour, what tends to happen is you get a tough sponge because you work in the gluten. So even a Victoria sponge can be quite chewy because you've overmixed it. So don't go mad, just bring that together like that, and you'll see...
When you say don't go mad, do you mean that? Is that how rigorous you fold?
Yeah, but I'm being quite careful, but it looks like I'm not being, but I am.
I thought the more you mix it, the more lighter it was going to become.
No, at the stage when you're beating in the eggs and sugar, yes. Yeah. But at this stage, no, because what you're doing, you're just working the gluten in the flour.
Right.
So even, as I said, a sponge can be slightly chewy.
Right.
So at this stage here, then transfer into your little dish, which I've got one here. Now, there's a great little tip here. I put a little bit of butter on the inside of the actual paper, keeps it away from the edge. It's a nightmare. Half the time, they're like this, and when you actually put the mixture in, it goes down the side.
Yeah.
It's a real pain. Happened to me Sunday when I was cooking this recipe.
Really annoying.
So put that in there, and pop that in the oven. You want to cook that for around about 35 to 40 minutes, until it's nicely risen. And I have one over here. Here it is. And that's what it looked like.
Oh, look at
OK? I'll put
delicious.
that there. Now, that's just still warm, because we've done that slightly earlier. Now, the syrup to go on it is very simple. So this is the lemon drizzle mix. In this pan here, I have granulated or caster sugar and lemon juice, and you want to boil that just until it starts to thicken. Now, if it's too thick, it won't go into the sponge. If it's too thin, it becomes watery and the sponge falls apart. See, just till it gets a little bit syrupy. And if I just show you where we're at, we're about sort of there. See that?
Ah, yeah.
OK, and then, while it's still warm, you pour that over the sponge like that, and you'll see straight away, because it's warm, it's starting to settle in. Now, as I said, if that's too thick, it just tends to stay on top.
Yeah.
Now, this recipe here, Ruth's recipe, does make two of these, because when you try and split recipes, sometimes it doesn't work, and you scale them up, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So this makes 2. So I've said, put one in the freezer. Trouble is, at my house, it never lasts to go in the freezer. So it's
Do they freeze well?
freeze extremely well.
How long for?
Oh, 2 or 3 months, no problem.
Oh, yeah, OK.
The other thing to say also is that with the syrup, I tend to leave it a day before you eat it, if you can.
So you want me to leave that cake in my house for a whole day?
No, what I'll do is I'll make it and drop it around the day later, because otherwise it won't happen, will it?
OK, yeah. I don't think it's going to last.
That's a challenge. That's a challenge. That, Mama.
Now, so, and then this is what, after you've let that go, I've got one here which I'm just going to cut open. Now, you'll see it's extremely light. And you there have a mixture of double cream, touch of vanilla, and a little bit of icing sugar.
Flavoured. Let's have a taste of
this.
this.
Now, that just goes with the lemon. Now, I do also add, while eating that, when I serve mine, just a little squeeze of lemon on there as well, just to brighten it, not a lot, just to get that lovely acidic kick to it as well.
Everything's so light.
It's light and fluffy.
It's not overpowering.
No. Now, that's the conventional version. I also have a gluten-free version. Now, this is slightly different, but it works. Now, I did a lot of work in gluten-free over the years, and this is the one we came up with probably about 12 years ago, and it works. It varies slightly differently from there because you don't have to beat the eggs in. So you just mix it like a muffin.
Yeah.
So it does use proportionally more sugar because you need to get structure. And the flour is slightly different. Because there's no gluten, you have to add things like starch, which is tapioca starch, arrowroot, rice flour, which if you get not too fine a rice flour, you tend to get almost like a gritty texture.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that this one here, you can whisk this for 10 minutes, it'll make no difference. It will not go tough like this one here because there's no gluten. Right. So you need to add a couple of things in there to get the light structure. Now, one on your right there is the gluten-free version.
OK.
So I want to see if you can taste the structure. OK. The mouthfeel's slightly different, but the flavour is pretty much the same, and it's light and fluffy.
It's slightly different.
It's very slightly.
Anything.
Yeah, exactly. So this is very simple. So here, sugar goes into the gluten-free flour mix. I then add a level teaspoon.
I love it.
Now, this is self-raising flour, by the way. And also, I've got here gluten-free baking powder. That goes in. Now, to add a bit of structure, we do add what they call xanthan gum. Now, xanthan gum mimics the stretchiness of the protein gluten, and this is a bacteria that's grown on things like beans and sweet corn. It's harvested, ground up, it's like a gum. And you add a quarter of a teaspoon for all this weight, will just tighten. Yes, you can.
That just binds it a little bit.
Yeah, now, 10 years ago, you couldn't buy it, but all the supermarkets now sell it. So I want to show you quickly this one here. So again, lemon juice to give it a bit of, tighten the protein, a bit of flavour, zest, just bring that together. This is how simple it is, right? Then you add the egg, all in, and then your butter, margarine, olive oil spread, melted, not softened. In that goes.
What's that?
All right? And it just mixes it together. And you'll see, as I'm doing this, you'll see that xanthan gum starts to tighten.
What difference does it make when you put the spread in or your butter in melted?
It adds to the structure. We found that when we did it this way, it did work, but the melting process tends to work better with the rice.
For the gluten.
Yeah.
Like a gluten.
And also, you're using a gluten-free mix. So what we did, also, fairy cakes, we found as a batter, a pouring batter, rather than a sponge, tends to get a lighter sponge.
Right. Wow.
And you'll see now that's starting to work. Now that the gum is working already, you can see that's tightening, and that just goes into the tin. I mean, it really is that simple.
And it's exactly the same discipline there. It's in the same time in the oven.
No, now, here's the thing. With gluten-free, also, proportionally, whether it's cakes, biscuits, pastries, take a bit longer to cook. Right. So this is 45 minutes to an hour, gently, gas 4, and it will rise beautifully like this one here.
And then the same drizzle with the...
Exactly the same drizzle. Now, before we cut this one here, before we go to our questions, if I just cut this one open, you'll see there's the texture. Put it onto there. Little squeeze of lemon on there.
Shall I tell you something? The gluten one is a little bit chewier, but I kind of like it.
And a bit of cream on top.
Really?
But, a bit of a chew.
But pretty much, you get pretty close to it.
Phil, we've only got a minute, but we wanted to get a couple of questions in. Katie, I want to make the perfect birthday surprise. It's my partner's birthday weekend. What's your go-to recipe?
Go-to recipe is always a basic Victoria sponge. You can't go wrong with it. 2 sandwich tins, sandwich together, make 3 or 4, stack it up. Yeah. Works perfectly.
Sophia wants to know, how do I make the best brownies? Do you or I know any...
You better ask that one.
Just watch my video, babe. It's amazing.
Yeah, but watch the egg, though.
What's
Katie,
your secret for brownies?
Keeping it squidgy. I put sweet potato in mine as the binder. Yeah, sweet potato puree. Works really well.
Wow. Dime bars, it's all the way forward. Katie, I want to make the perfect birthday surprise. It's for my partner this weekend. Yeah. What cake?
Again, I would either...
What am I?
We've done that one, haven't we?
Have you just done that?
Yeah, because I thought it was really interesting, so I went there first.
Well done.
Disaster, I'm so sorry.
You styled it out.
Janine, my cakes are always flat. I can never get cakes to rise properly. Is there a secret to the perfect...
Yeah, it depends on what flour you're using, adding extra baking powder and making sure you get nice and light and fluffy at this point. And if the mixture really curdles badly, it would tend to stop it rising.
Lastly, Craig, is there a recipe for gluten-free cookies you like?
I've got hundreds in my book.
Oh!
That was a joke, by the way.
Did someone order the side of Vickery?
Vickery, thank you so much. That was so good.
Very
for
impressive.
details of today's recipes and more delicious ideas from our chefs, all you need to do is download the free This Morning